Hello and welcome to round 7 of Grand Prix Philadelphia. I'm Ben Swartz, joined here in the booth by Steve Sadin, and we have quite a match for you guys. Go Dennis Vitaguris on the left-hand side of your screen is facing off against Josh Utter-Layton on the right-hand side of your screen. Both players are sitting at 5-1 going into round 7 here, so it should be an exciting match. Looks like the players are drawing their opening hands. Go Dennis seems to be content with his, and Josh Utter-Layton will go down to 6 cards. We should be getting their deck lists any minute now, so we can give you the lowdown on their decks, what interesting cards they have, what bombs they have, what have propelled them to a 5-1 record here.
So now, both of these players have 3 buys, so this is going to be their 4th played match. Got 9 rounds today, then we cut to day 2. Then we have an additional 10th round.
Today still, though.
That we play today, on Saturday. Day ends. Everyone who made it to day 2, everyone with a 7-2 or greater record after 9 rounds, gets to play tomorrow. Come back, do 2 drafts, see who advances to the top 8. Now, playing 10 rounds today, but only the first 9 rounds count towards day 1 records.
And another interesting thing about this event, since it's the largest North American Grand Prix ever, it's been split into two sub-events, right? There's the green side and the yellow side. They'll both combine tomorrow when day 2 starts, but it's a way for the tournament organizers to split it up. So it's still one event. That's just when you look at the standings why it's separated.
So while players in green pod cannot play against players in the yellow pod, and vice versa.
That's something I noticed. Is it looks like the players in, I believe, the green pod or blue pod are stronger as a whole than the yellow pod. But here we've got 2 yellow pod players, and play has started. Just land go for both Josh Utter-Layton and Go Dennis Vitaguris. Let's see if Go Dennis has a play on turn 3. Looks like he's sporting Rakdos colors. And he's going to start off with a Sewer
Shambler, which is particularly potent when his opponent has swamps.
Yeah.
So, in a lot of matchups, Sewer Shambler is of marginal importance on its own. It's the scavenge that really gives it value. But if your opponent's playing black, it's an unblockable 2-1.
Yeah, and we see Josh Utter-Layton plays a Lopper Crew, which usually would be able to block a 2-1, but Swamp Walk makes Go Dennis's Sewer Shambler unblockable.
Huh.
So Go Dennis will serve in for 2, dropping Josh Utter-Layton down to 18. Let's see if he has a follow-up play to that.
Oh.
Looks like Go Dennis is going to cast. Well,
we see a stab wound in his hand.
It would be interesting to see if he wants to use that stab wound on Josh Utter-Layton's Lobber Crew.
If he puts that on the Lobber Crew, it's going to be probably going to be tough for Josh to get rid of it. But no, Go just passes the turn.
I mean, maybe he wants to play a little bit more conservatively, save that stab wound for a high-impact creature that Josh Utter-Layton may have. I mean, it's definitely tempting to deal your opponent 2 damage during their upkeep every single turn, but
I would think so. Go could have put him on a very fast clock. But that is a Perilous Shadow for Josh Utter-Layton. Another good target for the stab wound.
Yeah, for sure.
So if Go put the stab wound on that, it would be very difficult for Josh to get in a meaningful attack with it anytime soon. He does not. Just plays a Rakdos Key Rune.
Yep, after serving in for 2, and passes the turn with Josh Utter-Layton sitting on 16 life. Go Dennis takes 1 at end of turn thanks to the Lopper Crew.
If Go had played the stab wound a turn earlier, he already would have gotten in 4 damage.
Oh,
Josh
wow.
would be on 12 at this point.
Wow, Josh activates the Lobber Crew, dropping Go Dennis down to 18, then plays Golgari Longlegs, untapping the Lobber Crew, passing the turn with a 5-4 up. That 5-4, I wonder how Go Dennis is going to deal with it.
Go up to 6 lands. He hasn't played much up until this point. He probably has some other strong spells in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, he's only played the Key Rune and the Sewer Shamblers, his only 2 spells. Hasn't played anything else. You have to assume that he kept a good enough hand with with other spells in it.
And if he didn't think that he had a good long game, he has a
Long legs of his own.
If Go didn't think that he had a good long game already, he definitely would have played the stab wound on
Sure.
turn 4 to just try to finish Josh off as quickly as possible.
So
It's so interesting for me to think about how different this game would have been had Go played that stab wound at the first possible opportunity. Josh would be down to 8 already.
yeah, it's been 3 turns. And then, yeah, it's interesting. It's a 5-turn clock, right? You're dealing your opponent 4 damage each turn because of the unblockable Sewer Shambler and the 2 damage from stab wound. He'd be dead in 2 turns from now, but Go Dennis is holding steady. Both these players on Rakdos decks. And Josh Layton's going to cast Viashino
Racketeer, discarding a Rakdos Cackler.
the Cackler.
So Josh also played a Rogue's Passage, which allows him to give any of his creatures unblockable.
What do you think about that card in Sealed?
I think it's really, if you're playing Rakdos, if you don't have any other real demands on your mana, I think it's great.
Especially because most of your guys normally do not have evasion, right? You're not a Azorius stuck with a bunch of flyers.
Right. So Josh has, we see Rakdos Cackler to get in a bunch of early damage, Lobber Crew that can help chip away at his opponent's life total, Golgari Longlegs, which needs a way to break through.
Yeah.
It's clear that the Rogue's Passage can play a big part in any of his game plans. Go still chipping away with his 2/1 unblockable creature. Josh now on 12.
Yeah, Godennis is still clinging on tight to that stab wound in his hand.
If he had played that stab wound, Josh would be almost dead.
Looks like he's going to play a Spawn of Rixmadi.
He is not unleashing it. At the end of his turn, Josh is going to hit him for another one with the Lobber Crew.
Yeah, I assume he wants to hold it back to block one of Josh's other creatures.
Or to force Josh to pay a lot of mana into Rogue's Passage. If
Sure.
Josh has to use Rogue's Passage, he'll be unable to make any other meaningful plays.
Especially, we'll be unable to pump up his Perilous Shadow.
What? Trouble seeing what that is. It's a little bit off camera.
Looks like that is a Necropolis Regent.
That's a
It's a big guy.
pretty big play.
6/5 flyer. When a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. A mythic rare from this set.
That's specifically combat damage.
Yeah, so that Lobber Crew is not going to gain any power. Not like it could do very much with it, but it definitely works well with that Rogue's Passage.
Yeah.
So Godennis needs an answer to that Necropolis agent quickly.
Or a way to finish Josh off before that 6/5 flyer can take care of.
I mean, if Godennis here has like a Trader's Instinct,
That's
taking the
huge.
Necropolis Regent,
He
that-
gets to attack in for 10, and then he could play a stab wound either this turn or next turn. And Josh is dead. But given how long Go was thinking, seems unlikely.
highly unlikely. But Godennis is a real methodical player. He takes his time. He grew up playing chess and being a chess player, so he always makes sure to think through his moves.
Right? He attacks with everything. Go was actually trained to sit on his hands.
I did not know this.
Yeah, he would sit on his hands until he knew exactly what he wanted to do. And Josh blocks the Golgari Longlegs and the Spawn of Rixmadi. Calls to 10.
Yep, still taking damage from the unblockable Sewer Shambler.
Been Godennis' only source of damage all game. He's already hacked away half of Josh's life.
Now Godennis is thinking over his options again. It's clear he's got quite a few playables in his hand. I believe he's got 6 cards in hand. Thinking over that stab wound. sitting at the front of his hand, seeing how many turns it would leave Josh Layton if he put it on perhaps the Lobber Crew. Well, looks like he's going to tap 6 mana. Is he going to cast 2 stab wounds?
Wow. Oh. That's 1 stab wound.
Okay. A second
and
stab
trying to
wound.
figure out where to put that.
So if Godinez plays these 2 stab wounds, it's going to drop Josh down to 6 life on his upkeep.
So
And then,
Good Ennis probably thought about the possibility that Josh could have launch party,
sure.
but still decided to put the second stab wound on the Necropolis Regent.
So yeah, Josh falls to 6. And Godinez is threatening lethal damage on the board next turn, with that Sewer Shambler being a 2-power unblockable, and then 4 more damage from the stab wounds on the Necropolis Regent of Josh Layton.
Now, Josh is representing 9 points of damage on the board if he pumps his shade all the way up and uses Lobber Crew, but that only gets Good Ennis down to 6.
I mean, the Necropolis Regent is still a 2-1 flyer.
Yeah.
But I mean, Josh can't really tap out all of his mana here, unless he's doing something to disrupt with one of the 2 things that Godinez is using to interact, right? Like, if Josh doesn't kill that Sewer Shambler or deal with the stab wounds, he's going to be dead on the following turn.
It looks like he has a Annihilating Fire peeking out of his hand.
Okay.
So he can deal with either the Sewer Shambler or kill off his own Necropolis Regent.
Which would you do here?
It depends on what else he has. If he kills off his own Necropolis Regent, that'll get him potentially get him an extra turn.
Sure.
Still, obviously not in a great spot. He would still need to find a way to deal with the Sewer Shambler in a hurry.
This is a pretty important point in the game for Josh Layton. I mean, he knows that his time in this game is finite, thanks to the stab wound and the unblockability of Sewer Shambler. So he needs to make sure that every decision he makes for the rest of the game is correct.
Josh just trying to figure out any way he can possibly either buy himself a little bit of time, punch through a little bit of damage. Oh, so you see, Josh attacked with his Perilous Shadow, pumped it, and passed the turn. So by leaving his Necropolis Regent back, it makes it very difficult for Good Ennis to attack with either his Spawn of Rixmati or his Rakdos Keyrune, because Josh can just block with the Necropolis Regent.
Little does Godinez know
get
that
rid of
Josh
the
is holding on to the Annihilating Fire.
I think Go can assume that there's some removal spell in Josh's hand. No?
Go's going to get in there with the Sewer Shambler. Is Josh going to use the Annihilating Fire? Does not look like it. Josh will fall down to 4 life.
Okay. So now Josh has to kill off his own Necropolis Regent.
Yep. Before he's given the opportunity to do that, Godinez is going to cast
Thrill Kill Assassin.
I wanted to call it a Skill Kill Assassin. I don't know why, but
And a Deathrite Shaman.
yep.
Yeah.
Annihilating Fire the Necropolis Regent. Get rid of those stab wounds.
So
Lava
Josh has
Korean.
to have a removal spell right now, or else he's going to die to the combination of Sewer Shambler and Deathrite Shaman.
Yep. Deathrite Shaman can use its second ability to exile an instant or sorcery card to have each opponent lose 2 life. That, coupled with the Sewer Shambler, is 4 life, which is all the life that Josh has left.
And I think even if Josh has a removal spell, he's still going to have to deal with either the Sewer Shambler or the Death, and he just passes the turn.
I mean, Godennis has 5 creatures now with a Keyrune. Is he just going to attack in with the Sewer Shambler? Looks like it. Josh goes to 2.
And
Deathrite Shaman.
Shaman, and they're off to game 2.
So yeah, Godennis wins the first game here of round 7 at Grand Prix Philadelphia, defeating Josh Layton.
Godennis decided pretty early on that he thought that he would have inevitability if the game went long. Decided not to stab wound his opponent's Lobber crew on turn 4. And ultimately let the game get a lot closer than it would have been had he made the other play. He still had enough to win the game, but if Josh had had a removal spell in there or some slightly better cards, then it easily could have swung the other way.
For sure. So let's take a look at these guys' deck list and see if
Both playing Rakdos?
See something, yeah. I'm trying to look for spicy things in Josh
we see that Josh has a light green splash.
Oh, with a 2 Golgari Guildgate and an Overgrown Tomb. What is he splashing for?
Oh, he's splashing a card that a lot of people leave in their sideboard, even when it's in their main color. Aerial Predation.
But he's also splashing for a powerful green card in the form of Corozda Guildmage.
So now, Josh had 2 Golgari Guildgates and an Overgrown Tomb that he could use to get green mana, essentially for free.
Yep.
With 3 green lands and 2 green cards, which is roughly the limit of how many cards you can splash without actually adding a forest or playing the Transguild Promenade that he left in his sideboard.
Yeah, I mean, in a deck like Josh Layton's, it seemed like he wanted to be casting creatures on every single drop. He didn't want to spend a turn.
Right, we saw a Rakdos Cackler.
Yeah.
So, obviously, he has the potential for some very fast starts, especially when he's on the play.
Okay, and so what about Godennis' deck?
So,
he is also on Rakdos.
no splash, at least for game 1.
Anything you might take out, anything you might put in?
What have we got here?
He's starting
He's
a
got a
Skullrend.
Skullrend in his main deck.
That card's clearly a lot better in Sealed than it is in Draft, but how much better do you think it is?
So, Godennis left a Tavern Swindler in his sideboard, a 2-mana 2/2, to play 5-mana discard spell, Skullrend.
Yep.
Personally, I think that I would have played the 2/2 for 2. I really like having a low curve, especially if I have 2 stab wounds in my deck. But Godennis decided to have more powerful cards to help himself out in the late game. A lot of people are going to play splashes, so
Yeah.
a lot of people are going to have pretty expensive cards, maybe stuck in their hand, that he can get with the Skullrend. Especially if Godennis is playing in such a way that he's not stab wounding Lobber crews
Sure.
on turn 4, then it makes sense that he would want to play more cards that would help him shore up his late game.
Looks like a Frostburn Weird starts things off for Josh Layton here in game 2. That card has been just a phenomenal card we've seen.
Oh, right, and Godennis has a Rakdos Shred Freak that he can't attack with.
Yeah.
Because of Josh's Frostburn Weird.
I mean, I remember when I first looked at the set and saw Frostburn Weird, that card doesn't seem that great. But it's really come into being one of the top red comments.
And Josh is able to attack with impunity.
Pump it twice.
Great.
Dropping Godennis down to 17, and then post-combat looks like he's going to play the Rakdos Cackler.
Did he? He did not
No Unleash.
put a +1/+1 counter on it, so he can block Godennis's Shred Freak should he attack with it. So Josh decided to play 18 lands in his deck, even though
Okay.
he's playing a fairly aggressive Rakdos deck. In large part because that would allow him to play cards like Frostburn Weird, which might have otherwise been just impossible for him to cast.
Yeah, I mean, if you're splashing a third color, it seems tough to cast a double red spell.
Godennis, again, has the Sewer Shambler on turn 3. But this time, Josh is on the offensive.
Yeah.
And knocking in for 4.
Yeah, Go Dennis falls to 13 after Frostburn Weird becomes a 4-1. That Frostburn Weird is really giving Go Dennis trouble. Sewer Shambler gets in, starts picking damage off.
Knocking Josh to 18.
Go Dennis will play the Dark Revenant.
A 2/2 flyer, and whenever it would die, instead puts it on top of its owner's library. Josh attacks in again with the Frostburn Weird.
Is this a time Go Dennis wants to put something in the way of it? Does not seem so, but
Nope.
Josh chooses only to pump it once.
Go Dennis down to 11, and Josh plays a Splatter Thug, which he unleashes. So Josh chose not to unleash his Rakdos Cackler, so he would have a blocker for Go Dennis' Shred Freak, but Splatter Thug, ready to rumble.
Yeah, I mean, 3/3 First Striker is a lot better than a 2/2 vanilla creature. Go Dennis gets in there with his 2 evasion creatures, dropping Josh down to 14 life. And after combat, looks like he's going to cast also a Perilous Shadow. So that will put something in the way of the Splatter Thug.
However, Go Dennis still doesn't have a profitable way to block the Frostburn Weird.
No. He can't really block it with the Perilous Shadow because Josh could just pump his Frostburn Weird 3 times. So it looks like Josh is going to get in there with the Splatter Thug and the Frostburn Weird, and Go Dennis is put to a decision. And he'll go ahead and block the Splatter Thug. What trick does Josh Arter-Leyton have up his sleeve? No.
But pumps up his Frostburn Weird 3 times, putting Go Dennis down to 7.
No play post-combat, just passes it back to Go Dennis. Go Dennis now at 7 life. Half of Josh Arter-Leyton's 14. Looks like Go Dennis wants to add something to his board. Maybe he'll first attack in again for 4.
We can see a explosive impact sticking out of Josh Arter-Leyton's hand. If Go at any point dips down to 5,
that's game over. If Josh gets a 6
has
land.
another land. Nope. Another attack. Josh is down to 10.
Post combat.
And
Go
an
Dennis
Ogre
plays
Jailbreaker.
no Gilgate in play, so that will just be a 4/4 defender for the time being. And it looks like Go Dennis only has 1 Guildgate in his deck. An interesting choice, having him play that card with just 1 Guildgate. It's quite good as a 4/4 defender.
Not the kind of card that you might necessarily expect to see out of a seemingly aggressive Rakdos deck. But if Go Dennis is planning on settling in for longer games, then he can get a lot of mileage out of 4 toughness blockers.
I feel like Go Dennis might have wanted to be a little bit more aggressive with his deck, but I mean, who's to say? He's the one who's won 3 Grand Prix. I have yet to win a Grand Prix, so. Looks like the Chaos Imps comes down for Josh Arter-Leyton. No, or is that an Unleash? Yeah, Unleash on that guy.
That's
So
a
7/6. Trampler, 7/6 Trampler with flying. So that's threatening to take the game away from Go Dennis, because as we know, Josh does have the explosive impact. Go Dennis does not know that his time is running out.
I think staring down a 7/6 flying Trampler, I think he might have some sense that his time is running out.
He probably thinks he's got 2 turns, though, you know, instead of having just this last turn.
Dark Revenant, normally a very strong blocker. Not great if your opponent's creature has trample.
Yeah. especially when you want to draw an out to their gigantic creature, and you have to block with your Dark Revenant, and it has to go onto the top of your library. Not what he wants to see there. So looks like Godennis is going to play Tenement Crasher, the 5/4 haste guy, and get in with that, and the Sewer Shambler.
So the Chaos Imp is a 7/6, but it's unleashed, so Josh can't block with it. The Cackler just jumps in front of the 5/4.
An explosive impact shown by Joshua Layton makes it so that he wins the second game here, tying things up at 1 game apiece. As the players go into Game 3 of Round 7 of Grand Prix Philadelphia. So there we saw another interesting game. Not a real aggressive start off of Joshua Layton, even though he had the Cackler that could have made it.
Well, he had
Frostborn
Weird that was just doing
Sure.
tons and tons of damage. But Josh never really needed to play any significant follow-up plays until he played the Chaos Imp. So, both of those games, we saw that the player who was able to get an unanswered threat on the board first was able to win.
The Sewer Shambler for Godennis in Game 1, and the Frostborn Weird for Joshua Layton in Game 2.
We also know that Josh has Chaos Imps and Necropolis Regent.
Gigantic
two
bombs.
awesome 6-mana flyers. And another reason why he's playing 18 lands.
As long as you can cast your 6-drops, you should be able to win off the back of one of them. So you want to make sure you can cast them on time when you draw them.
That's the question I was asking. How many?
So you'll see a lot of people playing limited decks that have 16, 17 lands in them. If your high end is that powerful, you just have to play 18 lands.
I mean, why would you want to lose to yourself, to your draw? The worst feeling in the world is when you're holding a powerful card like Necropolis Regent and you just can't get that 6th land. And you know that your opponent's toast if you have it.
You finally get to cast it on turn 9 or turn 10.
Too late.
And that's a dramatic rescue, which would have done next to nothing if you could have just cast your spell on time.
Interesting to see Josh Layton use that to make his deck building decision.
Meanwhile,
Really smart.
Godennis doesn't have that same high end. He's only playing 17 lands.
Yeah, I think
And Rakdos Keyrune.
he does have 1 6-drop, maybe a second.
He has the Tenement Crasher, which we saw.
He's got another 6-drop, which I don't want to reveal. Hopefully we'll see it in this last game. So, Godennis likely on the play here in the deciding Game 3 of Round 7. Let's see how things end up. Looks like Godennis is good with his hand. He's going to start things off with a Rakdos Guildgate. Let's see if Josh Layton has maybe a turn 1 Rakdos Cackler. And he does, and he goes ahead and unleashes it, placing a 2/2 threat on the board. Godennis just plays land go. Josh untaps, gets in with the Cackler, dropping Godennis to 18 and plays the Golgari Guildgate. Now you have to imagine that Godennis has a play here, right? If he kept a hand with no 3-drop, might be a little problematic, and looks like he's going to cast.
We see a Splatter Thug.
Yeah. And he is going to unleash it. Wow, okay. Both going an aggressive route. Do not want to block. Do not want to trade guys. I mean, it makes sense. Godennis' clock is faster than Josh Layton's, but
So Godennis now knows that his opponent has 2 really tough to beat 6-mana flying rares.
sure.
He's got to go on the offense, I think.
Yeah, he can't play a slow game like he did Game 1.
So
He's
I
just
think
gonna
if
lose.
Godennis knew what he knows now,
Oh,
2 games
wow.
ago. Oh,
A Deviant Glee on the Cackler will make it so Josh Layton's getting in for 4 damage here. Godennis, no blocker. The Unleashed Splatter Thug makes it so it cannot block.
Same time, Josh has no other play.
I think Deviant Glee is a card that a lot of people overlooked when the set first came out, and I think it's really powerful.
Oh, I love almost all of the auras. Pursuit of Flight, Deviant Glee, Ethereal Armor. Very high on all of them.
Splatter Thug gets in here for 3, dropping Josh down to 17. I think the ability to give your creatures trample, especially in the Rakdos decks, where reach is a little bit of an issue when you're playing against a Golgari deck with a lot of toughness.
Oh, and Godennis just played a stab wound on the Cackler.
Wow.
So the Cackler is now a 2-1. It's unleashed, so Josh can never block with it.
And it's dealing him 2 a turn. So Josh falls down to 15. He'll have to get in with the Cackler. Godennis falls to 12. Does Josh have a 4-drop here?
He does. It's a Cobble Brute.
5/2 vanilla creature. So gigantic, but it can get blocked and trade away with nearly any creature in the set.
Does Godennis have another creature?
Or a stab wound.
Sure.
Looks like there's a Perilous Shadow in Godennis' hand. Is that what he wants to cast here?
Well, it's not great against Cobble Brute here.
No, definitely not.
Godennis can play a land, go up to 5, be unable to pump up his Perilous Shadow.
Splatter Thug will get in there. No reason to block. With the Cobble Brute for Josh Arlayton, you'd just be throwing away his guy.
Knocks Josh to 12. Josh is going to fall down to 10 on his upkeep from the stab wound.
But first,
And Godennis does play Perilous Shadow. Do you think that Godennis is going to block the Cobble Brute?
well, he did see that Josh Arlayton had the Explosive Impact game 1. So that might be something.
I guess he can just block the Rakdos
Was thinking
Cackler
about.
and fall to 7.
Yeah.
That's probably a better block here. Godennis doing some quick math first to make sure that that makes sense.
Godennis will take 5, go down to 7 life. And post-combat, looks like he's going to play the Hellhole Brute.
Cryptborn Horror, which
Wow, I
is
was
currently
far
a 5/5 trampler. That's a card I've actually never played.
I played it once, and I was really not impressed with it. Because if you're playing a 3-drop after you've dealt a bunch of damage, then you're already ahead. And if you want to throw away one of your guys to get this gigantic guy, I don't know. Here it's really good, obviously, with Cobble Brute, right?
Right,
A
if
5/5.
you're playing against a deck with a lot of Unleash cards, then it becomes way better.
Sure.
Because you can count on getting some hits in.
Now, was that a card that Josh Arlayton had in his main deck?
It was. It was.
Okay.
Now, we know Josh has a decent number of aggressive creatures and Deviant Glee. But he's probably figuring he's playing sealed deck. He can get out ahead of his opponents. Now, Godennis trying to figure out his attack. He can't really, he cannot get in a good attack with the Perilous Shadow.
He
Josh
can't-
will just block. So even if Godennis plays land number 6, he can pump up the Perilous Shadow 3 times and kill the Cryptborn Horror. Josh just attacks back and kills Godennis.
Yeah, Godennis is. I mean, Josh is threatening 12 points of damage on the following turn. Is there anything Godennis can do about it? Look at that. The look on his face. Racking his brain through his different options.
Is he even going to be able to get in a good attack with his Splatter Thug? Maybe
Yeah.
not. Josh has a 5/5.
I mean, you definitely want to. Well, maybe you don't definitely want to, but you might want to consider bluffing attacking with the Splatter Thug. Maybe
Oh.
Josh won't block out of fear, and that 3 damage might end up doing something.
Oh, Godennis tapping out for his own Chaos Imp. Who is it? both of these players have Chaos Imp in their deck.
Of course, he's not going to unleash
Passes
it.
the turn. Josh falls down to 8 on his upkeep from the stab wound.
And so now, if Josh Arlayton Alpha strikes, then Godennis has a couple of different options with which to block. If he's convinced he'll survive until he untaps, then he can put the
Well, he needs to block one of
right.
Cobble Brute or Cryptborn, or else he just dies.
But does he want to block both of the 5/5s, or does he want to block the Cackler and hope to attack back with his Imp?
If he does that, he falls down to 2.
Right.
However, he knows that Josh has Explosive Impact in his deck. So
And
there might
Annihilating
not-
Fire.
Yeah. So if he was just worried about Explosive Impact, there'd be no difference between falling
Sure.
down to 2 or 5. But because of Annihilating Fire, there is. That gives Josh another card that he would allow him to immediately kill Godennis.
But again, it's risky proposition in Josh's shoes, because if he doesn't have that burn spell, then he's got to hope that Godennis thinks that he has that burn spell or is afraid of that burn spell, or else he's dead on the crackback. It's a really interesting situation for both these players to think out. Let's
So
see what he ends up doing.
If Josh doesn't have any spells in his hand, he has to attack with everything.
Yeah.
I think he has to attack with everything. So if he has a burn spell, he definitely attacks with everything. If he has creature, he attacks with
Everything, because he'll have a
everything.
blocker. For
and
the
if he has nothing, he attacks with everything.
yeah, so he's going to
So-
do it. He's going to attack with everything. Let's see how Godennis blocks. Now Godennis has to think long and hard. He's been putting
So now, if Godennis puts himself into Josh's shoes, think through all the reasons why he could attack, probably notice that Josh has no choice but to attack with
Sure.
everything. No matter what card he has in his hand, or set of cards, if it's nothing, if it's a creature, if it's a burn spell, then it's in his best interest to attack with everything.
But then how does Godennis block, right? Does he block thinking that Josh has nothing or has a burn spell? Or I mean, if he has a
Well, it
burn spell,
also
he's dead
depends on
anyway.
what's in Godennis' hand.
Sure.
Looks like
Is Godennis going to go ahead and block both the 5/5s? Yep.
falls down to 5.
Getting that Cryptborn Horror out of the way. And the Perilous Shadow also bites the dust.
So now Josh is going to fall down to 6 on his next upkeep from Stab Wound. Chaos Imp of his own. Josh.
No Unleash again, so he's got a blocker at least for that Splatter Thug. Okay, Godennis draws. Is that going to be the card that saves him from the 5/4 flyer?
Yeah, Godennis in a really tough spot here.
Again, he sees the end of the game. It's got to be most 2 turns. So how can he play perfectly for
So
these last
he
couple
needs
turns?
a way to deal with the Chaos Imp. And he needs a way to neutralize the Cobble Brute for at least a turn. If he attacks, which he has to,
Josh goes
Josh
and
will-
blocks with the Chaos Imps. Does Godennis have something, or is he just going to chuck away the Splatter Thug? Yep, just
Splatter Thug dies. Does it?
what happened
Oh.
to sitting on your hands, Godennis? Don't move until you see it.
Trying to figure out if there's any way he can survive through the next turn.
Just agonizing over this one decision. A really important spot in this tournament for these two. Yep, Godennis is going to throw away his Splatter Thug. Post-combat, 6 mana. Is that a Nizium Mortars? Wow.
Oh, jeez.
That will take out everything. Josh
Oh,
Arter-Layton's
jeez.
wiped the board clean.
No.
And he needed to attack him with that Splatter Thug to deal
If
the
Josh
damage.
doesn't block,
Yeah.
he's able to represent lethal this turn.
But Josh
Wow.
does have Perilous Shadow and a Splatter Thug of his own that he's going to go ahead and unleash.
And a Rogue's Passage.
So I think Godennis is drawing dead here, but let's see it. He needs a creature and then a kill spell. A creature
Or-
just this turn will let him survive, but
A creature buys him a full turn.
right.
The Perilous Shadow can get him for 6. So as long as Godennis has a way to block that, he should be able to live through another turn. But does he have any way to get ahead while he's doing that?
I mean, also, he's got to be aware that he's dead to 2 hits of the Splatter Thug plus the Rogue's Passage.
Yeah?
He's dealing with 3 cards of his own in his hand. What does Godennis come up with? 5 mana?
It's a Batterhorn. He has to block
Yeah.
the Perilous Shadow with it. So Godennis is going to fall down to 2, assuming Josh doesn't have anything, and he's going to be once again left with an empty board.
Not a good spot for Godennis here. And Josh is going to attack in with both of his creatures. How will Godennis block? He'll put the Cobble Brute, as you said, in front of the Perilous Shadow. He's got no other choice. Perilous Shadow will take out the...
The only block that could buy him another turn.
Godennis falls to 2 life. He's got an Annihilating Fire in his hand.
So he can deal with the Splatter Thug.
Is that Annihilating Fire or Explosive Impact?
It's Annihilating Fire.
Okay.
But even if he kills off the Splatter Thug, now Josh has enough. Oh, no.
That's
and
the match. Josh Arter-Layton takes the match 2 games to 1 over Godennis Vidaguris, advancing to 6-1 going into round 8 of Grand Prix Philadelphia.